Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
First of all, may I request that you turn off your cell phones, please? We have an approval in the back there, thank you. This would be odd enough without the intervening sounds of phones going off, so.
Set them to stun.
Yeah, really.
In whose pocket they are, yes. The second hobby obsession in my life is this blasted carpet arrow stubber. A little personal history. When I was 13 years old in the 8th grade. When I was 13 years old and in the 8th grade, this model came out. It was in July or so of '64. And I'd followed a bit in the magazines because my dad would always bring me home car crafts and Rod & Custom. You see, he was the one that sent me on these waves. And I was intrigued by the car, so I was cutting lawns and washing cars and spending all my money at the local hobby store to buy Predicta kits. That's no joke. I mean, seriously, I must have bought 7 or 8 of them. Built them all appallingly bad. Glue all over the canopy, misfitting doors, misfitting engines. Could never get one together. It certainly never looked good. And eventually, when I was about 16, just gave up. I thought, it's never going to happen. Well, I grew up and acquired some modest skills. And in 1978, I decided that I was going to write a book on the car and that I wanted to build some good scale models of it. At that point, I was just involved in scale auto, and I thought, well, heck, if I can build that stuff, I can build this. Got a hold of Daryl Starbird, wonderful, wonderful, gracious guy, including his wife, Donna. They started a correspondence with me that lasted from 1979 through just about a year ago, about the time of Donna, 2 years ago, the time of Donna's death. And they would share photographs and reminiscences, and I was off on a tear, contacting the Peterson Library for photographs that I'd licensed for my book, talking to anybody else, talking to the guy that owned the car once. I talked to the editor of Model Car Science, which magazine gave the car away in a contest in 1970. I went everywhere. It was astonishing and weird. But I was on my way. It was this youthful kind of preoccupation. I don't know what the devil it was. A psychologist would have a lot to say about it, and please don't tell me what they would say. But I learned that the car had been restyled for Monogram. That Monogram required him to paint it red, that he really didn't want to, but the kit was going to be red plastic, and so that's the way that went. And so on I went. And so I started the book maybe 7 or 8 years ago, gathering photographs the whole time. People still contact me. There's a fellow on the West Coast, Mark Weller. Mark here? Mark Weller found some pictures at the show in California where a guy had essentially taken a pedal car chassis and made a Predicta out of it. It's kind of cool. So he sent me pictures, Weller did. It's been a weird sort of journey. Let's just share a couple of pictures before I show you some artifacts and so forth. Whoops. Well, anyway, there. That's the title Bob Wick designed for the website. Just a bit of history in the car, and I do mean only a bit, because in prior 6 or 7 times, we've gone through this car and measured every square inch of what was defective and what wasn't. And the car was formed, this is how the car was started. This car was hit by something very serious, as you can see on its right side. Starbird picked it up for $150 or $200 from his buddy that ran the local junkyard. Amazing. So again, we're jumping around. He went out and got some other spare parts to repair the one side. Got a spare door. The frame, interestingly, wasn't bent. He said, "Who knows? It just a sheet metal hit, but a bad one." So he started to build it in September. No, that's not true. Mid-August of 1959. So I went down to the GM dealership and bought 260 Buick rear fenders and grafted them on the car. You see him welding on the door there, doing the rolled panel, working on the other side of the car. See, at one time the car did not have horizontal headlights. It had vertical ones. And look at this character line in the early shot that comes down the side of the car, and look. I'm so incompetent. Ah, there. See this? That's the vertical headlight pod. At least the vestiges of to start with. And there comes the character line down the car. It was simply a piece of rolled, he used a lot of steel conduit. He just welded it in place, brazed it in place, and then let it over the top. Didn't use much Bondo in the first iteration. You've seen the car, it's got the tiller steering. It's a combination of a 58 Chrysler steering sector and a 55 Thunderbird. So one thing activated the shift rod, the other one went forward on a tiller system. It's amazing. It's just, as Bob Wick discovered when he drew this thing out, it's really astonishing. The car showed up first in Carcraft magazine. When I talked to Peterson, now Motor Trend Group, I think, they own all the photographs after that huge project they had at the Peterson Library to rescue all the original negatives. There were about 1.25 million of them. They rescued them all, and each photograph of him now is 35 megabytes. No, megabytes. Each image is 35 megabytes. They're enormously large. Steve Roullier rescued some of those for me. But I licensed some of these for the book. Now look what's interesting here. Look at this front end. This is just tubing that he plated copper and just held it in place. The upper sheet metal here dips in, so this thing has a shape like this in the front. It's amazing. This was satellite blue, mid-50s Chrysler color. These are 59 Cadillac taillights that were painted white.
Hold it, Mike.
Gotta kiss it, Mark.
It's hard to get an attorney to learn two techniques at one time.
Well, walk and chew gum.
If that. These are 59 Cadillac taillights. They bought in quantity, of course, sprayed them white. There are 3 here. You don't see them. There's one here. Those are red.
Okay.
All of these were screwed to a thigh or what do you do with wood when you darken it? Metal. It's plywood.
Really?
And that's how the car went together. This is another car from the Peterson shoot. Shot there. He won the Motor Life Car of the Year award. That's him in late 1961 at his favorite park near his home in Kansas. Now this is interesting. When Monogram contacted him in late 1963, late 62, they wanted to do a model of the car. The question then was, which version? Because this is not the original version. The reverse rims are off it. The front end has a chrome wrap and not the tubing. And so they traded the car back to Monogram from Kansas. And they shot this picture. Steve, would you go get that piece of artwork over here? That is this. In 1991, Monogram gave me all of the original kit photographs. This is the original photograph. I just had, hold it up here. I just had bound a while ago. But you see, this was just, there was no digital camera. There were no digital cameras those days. It was just, shooting on cellular. So they would back the car up and stationary camera and move the car a few inches and do their shot. Look up here and see how right here in the picture, Steve, right here. You see how that wall's all screwed up?
Mm-hmm.
That wall is this wall. Well, you can't do anything with this, and this distorted the length of the recorder panel. So, Steve Roullier, God bless your soul, Steve, took this image and cleaned it up digitally, spent about who knows how many hours, and produced this picture and fixed the wall. This picture can't exist because remember with this, they were worried about parallax.
Yeah.
Okay? This thing is parallax personified, except that picture can't exist because the apparent distance from here to the camera and here to the camera and here is all the same distance. So it's complete baloney. That's one of the reasons that Monogram got screwed up. Someone just wasn't using their head. Anyway, this picture was given to me. What was the guy's name at Revell? Who was the kid over here to tell me?
Roger Harney?
Roger Harney. God bless you. Who said that? Roger Harney. Thank you, very good. Roger Harney, I made really good friends with him in the late 80s, early 90s. Roger Harney gave me everything, well, we thought at the time, everything Monogram had on the car, including this image and this image. Again, they're all pasted together. He also gave me all of the photographs that were taken of the car in the yard where they ran 2-inch tape over it. Remember, there was no digital scanning, so you had to run tape over it to divine the shape. And that's one of the reasons I think I was so screwed up. Thank you very much. So this was the image they were working from. This distance here is about 6 inches longer than it should be. This distance up here is about 8 inches longer.
Wow.
And that's what they used. Until the car was delivered, I'll show you in a few minutes, until the car was restyled and delivered to them, parked in the warehouse next to another starboard creation, and they took a tape measure out to it and said, oh my gosh.
Jeez.
So then Starboard took it back to his shop, tore it to the ground, restyled it, and so forth. He flared the wheel wells, got rid of this crazy ring on top here, and sunk the bubble down into the body, flared the wheels into here. This car had been driven a lot at this point. It had, you can see some hints of some of the dings on it. He drove it extensively. Was arrested once for driving it on the freeway down near Kansas City. Someone thought it was it was abandoned by the side of the road, and someone said it was an alien ship from another planet that landed. It's a true story. I've got the police report, seriously. And here's his hand-scribbled police report. Flying something or other, is on whatever this road is near Kansas. Go out and investigate. It was his car. It just ran out of gas. Because you fill the gas through the bubble. Okay, you open the bubble up, here's the pipe, versus spilled gas all over the interior. It was kind of weird. But the thing was, man, then he sat at another car wash one day. The original shift lever for the automatic transmission was just a chrome rod with a little like ball on top. He broke the weld as he's sitting at this burger joint. So he says he sits there for about 3 hours with his hand adroitly on the bubble, his hands here, until everyone went home. Got out of the car, his buddies went down to the floor jacked it up and welded it back on and took it home. I mean, he was like 29 at the time. It was completely wonderful and bizarre stories. When he restyled it, here's the version. This image has been cleaned up by Steve Roullier. We're going to use it in the book. But look at the difference. See, the top now is recessed. There's a ring now that's co-planar with the side of the body. These are, notice now, here's a critical point. You see this in-cut body line comes down here? It flares up and over the wheel well. The kit doesn't show that. The kit is also wrong in this mention. The door's wrong, the front fender's wrong, the bubble top's wrong. But this is the original image that Starboard took before he delivered the car to Monogram. Years later, and we're jumping about 10 years later, when Monogram had stopped campaigning the kit, the advertisements from about 1966 on stopped including pictures of the Predicta in the kit lineup. Though the little coffin was there and other things were there, other bizarre things were there. So they would, Monogram, I can't remember his name right now, they had like a foreman in the shop, and they would load this car on a trailer and take the shows in the upper Midwest. Open trailer, in the winter. Oh, look here now, look at the dirt. They would drive it on bad roads. Look, if you could see this better, the wheel well is filled with dirt. Look at the dirty tire. And they would put it up on this flimsy display stand, wipe off the exterior surface with a chamois, I guess, and display the car with the sign, of course. So the car was starting to not be well respected at the company. So, let me back up. At this point, the car was taken back into the warehouse. In 1978, Carcraft carried an advertisement for the little coffin and the Predicta to sell them. They sold the little coffin to Darryl Starbird. Starbird didn't know this car was for sale. No one told him, and he didn't see the ad. So the car stayed with Monogram. And that's one of the routes that led off to this other situation. Now, one of the things that Mr. Harney gave me were all the blueprints, the drawings that kit makers use to make the dies and so forth. I'll show you those. have all of them. And they're all now listed. A chart will be in the book. But you see down here, you see all of the dates. They're all 1963. You see this down here? You've got the name of the artist, you've got the date. And these are pretty good. Bob Wick tells me these are pretty good drawings in terms of professionalism and so forth. But I've got the whole set. There are like 60 of them. And so to preserve them, I had them all scanned by a client, and now they're on a flash drive. Here's the dashboard, so called.
Microphone?
Here, yeah. It says upper upholstery. Here are all the dimensions for the kit. Again, kit dimensions, not real car dimensions. And we'll get into that in a few minutes with Lynn Koberna and Steve Roullier. Front suspension. Who's ever built this kit? Did you try to get the front end together? I mean, crude to be sure. It's a representation of a 56 Thunderbird front suspension, and only barely that. But here are the parts. Here's how they designed the parts for the kit. Now listen. Now look at this. 1962. Look at what they're doing.
Microphone.
Look what they're doing here. The body is too tall, obviously dimensionally. This is the inner character line on the flip side of the fin. Okay? Look how this round shape does not intersect this line. This line should be down here with this radius intersecting that line. And it isn't. This is what they used to do the dies, or whatever you want to call them, for the first kit. So we're just sampling. There are 60 of them after all. We're sampling to say there are 60 of them after all. And they'll all be on the website with restrictions across the front, so no one can copy them. I'm under some restrictions. So here we are with the project. Here's the first kit. This was done by famous artists. This is Chicago, and this is, I can't remember the name of that tower. It's a real building, everything else is baloney. But you'll notice here that the art shows this radius intersecting that line, not seen on the car. You'll notice here also this is too tall, it's too bulky. This wheel well is too large. But it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing. There's the side shot. Do we have this box here? Steve, do you have this box? Do we have this original box?
This one.
Yeah. As you might imagine, I've been collecting kit boxes I have several dozen of them. It is obsessional. But here's the original kit. The box art and so forth. Got his picture on the side, the end flap, features of the car, the model on this side. What I just showed you. This picture, a young looking, it's sort of a photograph, but it isn't. Do we have that kit? Steve, bring that kit box, that box with the kit box over here really quick.
Hey, this one? Do you want to sit?
Just bring it over here, we'll show you.
This one?
Yeah. No, they leave this here. The other one, no, yeah, just leave that here. Well, I can show it on this. The first thousand or so versions of the kit were in pearl red plastic. The problem is they couldn't get, as Harney told me, they couldn't get the metallic powder to distribute evenly in the plastic, so it ended up having splotches in it. Come up, look at this. This is one I assembled, polished the plastic, assembled right out of the box. It's got splotches over the fins. It's everywhere. You look at it, there are splotches. And I was told by Harney that hobby store people were taking these kits back because buyers, kids, whoever would buy them, and complained that the kit was defective. They didn't like the pretty plastic. They didn't like the different colors and so forth. So they take them back, and there were enough taken back that Monogram said, "Oh my gosh!" They stopped production, cleaned out the dyes of all this stuff, and ran that traditional red plastic that you all have seen. When you come up here later, look at it. The worst place is probably on the fins. And the other thing that's interesting about the fin, right here, this fin is not even. It kind of bubbles like this. real subtly. Then on top of that, this line, look at the curve in it here. You see that? Someone screwed up. It's not just that this line is curvature, but the whole thing tucks inward. Look at this later. Okay, look at the line down here. See where it tilts inward? Tilts inward here, and the splotches are really bad through here. Bad splotches here and on the front of the hood. Now, if a hobby store ordered a case of kits, Monogram would send them out an assembled display model and one of these displays, produced by Monogram in-house and shipped to the hobby store who bought just 12 kits. You have the assembled model. The early ones, of course, were the pearl plastic, later replaced with the red. This is one I put back together because I have an original box, and I have this pearl red one. We sort of assembled it for historical purposes. But I have a solid red original one that came out of a hobby store that closed in the Chicago area about 10, 15 years ago. That'll be shown in the book. Yeah, here's the original one. This was assembled at the factory. See, I have not put that goofy star thing here on the side. This thing. It just always seemed kind of weird. But look at this interesting part. Do you see the TV up here, which was always painted body color? At the factory, they masked that and painted that red. Because the interior is white. So they wanted it to look a little better, maybe give some visual relief, who the devil knows. But this is literally the piece that was sent to this hobby store. This guy just packed it away. Then the second kit came out. They wanted to repack, the Monogram was going through a repackaging of its kits at this point. And so they took a picture of this. Everyone thought that this was taken to the New York Auto Show, except the New York Auto Show doesn't contain any records that show the car was ever displayed there. Who knows where this picture was taken? It's an actual photograph. The color is not correct. It's way too dark, way too cinnamony, too metallic. But that's what they used. You notice how they changed the background to be a little more stylish and avant-garde. See this? Here's the third issue. This is I bought it with plastic on here. Notice the difference in the box art, the upper right-hand corner.
What's the year of that one, Mark?
67. Now this is interesting. In 1994 or 5, I had some business dealings with Ed Sexton, who was then working for Monogram. And our deal was, I sold him stuff and he sold me stuff. He sent me 2 kits of the New Zealand version of this. New Zealand. We later found out that they shipped dyes, we think, to New Zealand. They ran them there in this appalling brownish reddish color, just awful. And the box opened from the end. It wasn't the lid, it came open at the end. I have 2 of these now. More of the box art on the side. Comparisons of the box art. Again, as styles change. Okay, here's the one from New Zealand. You see the end flap?
Mm-hmm.
The instruction sheet matched the original one, but I don't know what they copied it on. You can scarcely read it. I mean, it was hard to read, seriously. But they made a couple of thousand issues of the kit and then shipped the dies back to Morton Grove. You tell me. Here's that original factory-produced kit and the interior that they built. Oh, you notice here, they put a speck of dark paint on the gauges. I did not do that. Now, as I told you, one of the real problems was with the kit that it wasn't even close to being accurate, either in appearance or certainly not in dimension. So when I had all these photographs, I started to play with them, shot black and white prints of them, marked them up and so forth. I asked a good friend, Lynn Koberna, sits right there, to go visit Daryl Starbird. I made arrangements with Starbird's, and Lynn got on a jet plane and went back there with all these pictures and took dozens of measurements. Lynn, do you want to talk just for a few minutes about that experience you had back there?
Sure.
One of the real treats of my model car experience was going to, flying to Tulsa and then to visit Daryl and his dear wife, Donna Starbird, at the National Hot Rod Museum that he had in Oklahoma. And when I got there, Daryl gave me the tour of the place very graciously, and it is so magical. And I believe that's owned by Clay.
Now one,
Yeah. Smith, is Smith?
Clay Smith, Speed Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska, now with the cars.
Yeah. Real treat. Now, the museum where the Predicta was housed was a conical shaped ceiling, kind of like a yurt, and there was a ceiling daylight skylight at the top. And so I walked in, it was in early morning, and the rays of the sun came through this skylight and shone down on the Predicta. And it looked like blue flames. That amazing paint just was glowing. And so it was almost a spiritual experience, like heaven was blessing that car. So I had a very intimate time with Donna and Daryl. We had lunch together. Daryl made sandwiches, and we got down on our hands and knees with a yardstick and a tape measure and measured, like Mark said, dozens of accurate dimensions so that we could actually build a realistic scale kit. So, thanks.
Thank you. Lynn's too modest. He spent a lot of time with them. And I've assembled this spiral net notebook of all of the dimensions he took. I sent him back with these things. They measure things down to the quarter of an inch. I have dozens of these. You come up looking later if you want to. But all of these chronicle the inaccuracies of the car to the kit. And boy, there were some serious inaccuracies. Then, sorry. At that point, of course, it doesn't do any good just look at the page. You've got to be able to translate that data into a useful format so that if any attempt to do a correct model or even a kit issue can occur. That's when I called good friend Steve Roullier up and said, Steve, you've got to take these measurements, take the photographs, and do lines on them. So here we go. This is some of the measurements.
Talk this quick through?
Just come up, talk it through. Come up and talk it through. These are some of the accurate measurements.
Microphone.
Sorry. Some of the accurate measurements. Here's some of the accurate original measurements that Lynn took. Here are the photographs he took. And this shows the
Hey, how many of you were here before? So some of this will be a little familiar. But anyway, so this was one of the first drawings Mark sent me, just with his hand-drawn measurements. I think this was even before Lynn had gone to see the car. And he said, can you just put this in a more graphic form? So using my self-taught Photoshop skills, I had done that. These are like 3 photos of the car, profile, front and back. They're not, they're not dead on accurate photos, so you can't actually use them to derive measurements. Again, this is an early attempt to put those measurements in a readable graphic form. And I probably did, probably 2 or 3 of these for each photo. There's like these measurements, there's one that goes under the car, but I'm not going to show you all of them. There's another one. And then the back, which is again a kind of crucial area of inaccuracy on the kit. So that was important to get that kind of right. So then Mark duplicated those 3 photographs of the real car on the model. so we could have a comparison between the model and the real car. And so then here are the actual measurements on the model, kind of just duplicating those earlier photographs. Okay, and then back to the real car, we have the real measurements scaled down to 1/24th scale, and in essence just divided by 24. So the green, I don't know if you can see that, but it's like the green is the monogram kit dimensions, and the red is the correct 1/24th scale dimensions. Did that for, again, like those same photographs in a multitude of ways. And you can see some of these, like how far off. Some of them are not that far off, some of them are just way off. Again, the front with the same technique applied, back, same kind of thing. Oh, and then finally, okay, so if you start looking at the car, this was a certain amount of guesswork, but I think we also have a measurement of the height of the bubble top. So we could look at, again, we tried to take a photo of the kit from exactly the same angle as the real car was taken from. And again, you can't do it precisely because you don't know what lens they might have been using, you don't know what distance they were standing at, you don't know, you have parallax, you have all that kind of stuff. But anyway, here's the comparison. You can see like the bubble on the model is just, way too high from what it is on the kit, what it should be. So yeah, that's what I did.
Thank you, Steve.
Mhm.
As you can imagine, those kinds of measurements, and there are dozens and dozens more of this crude sampling of them, were necessary, of course, to one day do a correct model. A little bit of history. In 1962, Monogram, through hobby stores, campaigned something called the Monogram Custom Car Lot. If you look carefully at the top, up here, you can see the 55 Chevy. Somewhere here, there's that 44 pickup that Darryl Starbird worked on. But there's no Predicta, of course, because it was too early. This book, which later showed up in Predicta Kit and others, was written by Starbird, featured his cars exclusively, and gave definitions of key customizing terms like chopping and channeling and Frenching and so forth. This was a big window display. Then Monogram went in further. I don't have that here. Here's an ad that they had. You see with the Predicta Kit down here, the little T atop that. And then they went on, of course, to the 8 scale stuff about the same time. These are all original ads that have been scanned. It seems that the young man grew up a great deal from here to here. Those were only about 18 months apart. Look at the preppy haircut, dudes. Okay, now we're going to back up. Now, a little history, more history. Darryl and I have been friends since the early 80s. Been to his place several times. Is Bruce Pierce here? Bruce! 1996, if I had that date correct, Bruce met me at Starbird's Museum. We did a 2.5-hour interview with Darryl. The two of us there, we visited these cars, we hung out there. He took us to lunch. Piled in one of his cars, and he took us to lunch. It was a great time, a real terrific time. Bruce, I enjoyed your presence. That was one of these several things that went on. Bruce went home, I went home. Got too busy with my office and so forth. But always there was this idea in the back of my head that someone had to do a correct kit. So about 4.5 or so years ago, I approached Darryl. Let me first show you something. I made it. made a proposal to Ed Sexton, who was then in charge of what remained of the monogram company here in the United States, that I would, we were talking about reissuing the kit yet again in maybe 2009, 2010 or so. And I said, I'll make you, with Bob Wick's help, I said, I'll make you a deal. I will provide a how-to booklet on how to build, right out of the box, a competent, though not, certainly not advanced or detailed, version of the car and how to avoid some of the problems with the body. And so I did all these photographs for the one I built. And I sent them off to him, looked them over. Monogram at that point they were in that bankruptcy thing, and I kiboshed the entire project. That we don't know where the tools are for this, or I think they're with this company that Keeler is now with, but Keeler doesn't know, and no one does. These big beryllium dies are Lord knows where. So at that point, I closed all of that up and deliberated on it further. I went to Starboard about a year and a half later, and I said, look, Daryl, Monogram's not going to do anything with this kit. Sell me the rights to produce it. I want to buy the license, which should be exclusive to me for kits, publications, the whole thing, the whole intellectual property, bag. And he did. So I bought the whole thing from him. It wasn't a lot of money. It was surprisingly less than I thought it would be. But I now own all of that. So if Monogram, what remains of Monogram in Germany now, we're going to issue the kit, or Keeler's company, they have to come to me to get permission. And I will milk them to produce. Now, I've got plans to produce a kit, and I'm going to. And there are going to be several aspects to it. I retained the services of Ed Leisure, whom I'm sure many of you are acquainted with.
Brad.
It's right here. Ed Leisure with Brad Leisure, I'm sorry, with the help of Dave Hadley, we produced this prototype, but very seriously near production new kit lid. Sourced from some initial drawings and design proposals by Bob Wick. Leisure, of course, did all the color artwork and so forth. And we have that box.
Right there,
Can you hand it to
on the
me?
bottom. Oh, this one?
Literally, that's the box. You're welcome to come and look at it afterward. This is pre-production, to be sure, but this is the thing we're going to do, because I'm going to rewrite Monogram history. In my world, they would have done it right. They would have had a correct kit. It would have been detailed to the best of their competitors. Who's the biggest competitor in terms of high-quality model kits in 1964, 63, 64, with Monogram? Who was it?
Johann.
Yes. And what was the kit? Yes. So the point was Johann could do that. Why couldn't Monogram? Correspondence from the two guys in charge of Monogram. Well, we sort of ran out of interest, and things were going to slot cars and drag cars and all the rest of the crap, and they just shut down production. They didn't take it, they corrected it, and they knew it. They deemed it a toy, a nice plastic toy, and they shut down everything. I'm going to go back and correct that. Monogram at the time offered a little kit through Auto World to working lights and a working little motor. And so I'm thinking about how that can be interfaced, but we're going to do all of the details that could have been done by Monogram if they hadn't lost their nerve and hadn't been seduced by slot cars and all the rest of that, excuse my French, all that nonsense, and decided to do a proper kit to compete with their main competitor wasn't Revell and it wasn't A&T. In terms of high detail, it was Johann, followed closely by Revell because of Keeler. But this is literally the box art. I'm gonna hire some people to do some, instruction sheet and so forth. I'm gonna get some 3D people involved. I hope to entice Chris Sobek to do the 3D work. We're gonna do a lot of things and do correct things. Very low production kit, because I can't afford to do tooling. Good Lord, a couple $100,000 is not a reasonable fee, but you can do a 3D, and that's what we're gonna do. One of the things we're gonna do with the original kit, we're going to offer the correct Hemi setup. Who knows what Roullier, you be quiet. Who knows what this carburetor is?
That's a Holly.
Very good.
I knew we could do it.
Do you know what it's from? You know the year?
Had one on my 57 Ford six-banger.
This particular one is 1960 Falcon. Glass bolt. Starboard on the first version of the car ran 4 of these carburetors on a custom log on his Hemi. Okay? So, we've tried this once. Lynn, who was the fellow who helped us do the original scanning? Lynn was the guy. It turned out pretty well, but could be better. As he did all the work on the slide for me, and it was very generous. But with 3D printing, you can do all of this detail. You can do a separate piece here. Pieces like this are going to be made with 3D. The body's going to be 3D. I'm going to hire, correct people to do the decals, obviously. I'm thinking of Mark Jones about that. And we're going to do a correct frame and all the rest of this. To offer this kit, probably only produce about 100 of them. And they will be expensive, as you can imagine. But for my interest, I want to do a correct kit, as if Monogram could have. And Monogram could have done this. There's nothing on this list of
Mark, is that your 124th scale?
124th. I'm sorry. There's nothing on this list of things here that could not be done. No detail here wasn't also done on the turbine car kit. Remember, the turbine car kit had separate front fenders, had coiled springs, it had articulated suspension. No reason this car couldn't have had the same. They've been serious about it. They said they didn't want to open the doors up. You know what the reason was? Because the slight radius of the front would have created, die problems. They did the 58 Thunderbird with a curved door and it opened. So it's all just eyewash. It's all nonsense. But they initially intended this to be a highly detailed kit and just lost their nerve and walked away. Okay, that's all right. And we're going to do a big Predicta, which of course is Bruce Pierce's idea. Here's the proposed artwork, again based on something Bob Wick has done. I don't know where Leisure got the image of that kid from someplace. And this is just 24 scale model blown up. But we're going to mimic that big one and probably only make 5 of these because these would be frightfully expensive. But see, Monogram at one time, oh my gosh, I can't remember which one said that. At one time for 1 or 2 afternoons, thought about doing a big Predicta when they're doing the big Deuce, the big T, the big Dub, and all the rest. And when they lost their nerve on this, lost their nerve to that, and never even started. But they thought about it. Remember later they did the big Corvette, they did the big Jag, and eventually a Trans Am 25 or so years later. But this will, something like, further development of this will be that big box lid. Okay?
Your box art's not gonna say Monogram, is it?
Oh, yes.
Don't they own the trademark for that?
No.
He does.
Not in connection with this kit. That's what I bought.
Kit, but Monogram is Monogram's trademark.
Agreed. But in connection with the kit, you see, this is lifted from that period of time. I cleared it with an intellectual property attorney.
Okay.
Sorry. That's not my specialty in the law. Well, it's the same issue here. It's the same issue. I'm going to trust he's giving me proper legal advice. I'm not an intellectual property attorney.
If he gets sued about that, it'll make the ones you buy even more expensive.
Can't hear you. Speak up, Bruce. Louder.
I was just making a little joke here. If you get sued for copyright infringement on Monogram's trademark, that'll make whatever you produce worth a lot more. Kind of like that candy swirl paint or plastic.
And they'll bankrupt me.
Yeah, well, that's a side issue. If you get them done first, we're good with it.
So that's essentially the project. I've got some things to show you up here. In that connection, here is a thumbnail scan of all the engineering drawings they had on the kit. They're here. We have some other.
The other picture.
Bring that forward.
Mark, how much will those first 100 kids or last 100 or whatever, what are they gonna cost, do you figure?
I don't know my cost yet. I don't have a clue.
model factory here.
This is Leisure's art he sent me when he did, it's the same thing on the box art.
Mm-hmm.
He did this art, it's all digital, and I had it framed to match the frame of the other one.
So Mark, just to understand, the potential plan for the kit is doing a 3D print
Yes,
for the body.
for nearly everything. No, I'm gonna hire a machinist to do the wheels, they need chrome plated. Certain parts on the engine will be machined. Hobby machine, I'll let a contract somebody to do them.
So some of the parts would be injection molded or just resin cast?
None injection it's too expensive. Resin cast, machine,
Okay.
3D, and so forth.
3D
What about the bubble?
patterns.
That's an interesting question. I've been searching that out. Chris Sobak tells me that you can do clear bubbles, but they are not optically pure. They get shade, but they have wiggles in them. There's a company, one of my railroad buddies told me, I've not searched it out, that will do windshields for trains and anything else in real glass, miniatures. I've not sought that out, and I'm sure that's just mind-bendingly expensive, but it's real glass. Now, the original bubble, of course, was lucite. So I'm gonna have to experiment around to get somebody
Mark,
to.
you know, Starbird published a magazine article. I used his magazine article to make my bubble top for my Mysterion. It's easy to do, so put more your own.
Sure.
It's easy.
Well, and I will happily rely upon your help with that, Jeff.
Yeah.
'Cause
You just volunteered.
you should not have said that.
You have to earn my price.
I think you've just become part of the Predicta project, dude.
You have to earn my price.
Well, we'll talk about that.
The price just went up.
Price did just go up. I wanted to summarize the further developments in this kit because it's the last time we're meeting here. And we produced 6 or 7 of these things before. When we talked about the intricate parts of history that have not been told before. Were not told before I discovered them. This is obsessional. I hope I get it done in my lifetime. I'm 72. I'm in good health, except for a bad leg, but otherwise I'm in good health. And I'm going to try and get some investors involved with me and so forth. It's going to take some money to do this. Not a lot, but maybe probably more than I have. I'm going to turn to Bob Wick for his help in doing dimensional work on the frame and chassis and so forth. There are all sorts of really terrific experts that I'm going to try to entice, one might say commercially seduce, into coming and working with me on this project. It'll be announced, of course, on the website, which we're about to update. And if you want to check in with that website from time to time, you'll certainly learn about this. And I'll talk about any legal difficulties I run into. But that's where we are essentially. There is, one more thing. They did adverts like this in the mid-60s. You notice the top center one is the kit version they did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to reproduce these and modify that to represent the kit. It'll have opening doors, for instance. When we do the display box, I don't think we have one here, the images on the side will show the further details of the kit, opening doors, correctly detailed hemi and so forth. You see? All that kind of thing will be done. To sort of go back and play with history a little bit. To show what could have been done, and it could have been done. If Joanne could do it, certainly Monogram could. They had more revenue than Hanley did over there. It's just a matter of they lost the will or they got distracted by other product lines and so forth. I mean, I don't know all the reasons. I've got an extensive library of correspondence with Bob Reeder, the other guy. Bruce, who's the other guy there? At Monogram. There's Reeder and the other fellow.
I mentioned Hanley.
Speak up?
Hanley.
No, he was with, no.
Oh, Bob Johnson.
No, he was later.
When Sexton, wasn't it?
Sexton.
No, they're all later. I'm
That's
talking
the
about the
guy.
original guys that formed the company. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I have an extensive library of correspondence with them starting in about in the early 80s. And that's when they spilled the guts. They told me all the inside secrets of how the car was made, the kit was made, and why it didn't turn out better. And their confessions about why they didn't have opening doors, why the suspension is toy-like. I mean, on a good day, it's toy-like. the big rod came forward and moved this thing on the front. I mean, come on. The engine, if that's a Hemi, I'm somebody else. I mean, it's not a Hemi. Anyway, it's a very interesting background. I'll publish everything online, of course. I have, somewhere here, I wanted to pass this around. I didn't have time to reproduce it, but I have I thought I had. Well, I don't. I thought I had a notepad here. I would like to get your names if you want to be on the email list. I certainly would like to have that. If we can find a piece of paper, maybe a piece of your paper there. Oh, please, why don't we circulate something around there? That's very nice, thank you. If you would just write, make sure I have your correct email address, because that's how I'll be in touch with you.
So will this be a common kit at your next GSL?
Well put.
You are a bad man. You are
Just saying.
You are genuinely evil.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Why don't you just circulate number to Ed? She started right there. Hand me those two by let me show those two. See the yellow and the red one? One of the things that ingratiated me to Hanley is that about 25 years ago, when eBay was just starting out, thank you, I had a search. They have a search capability. They have a search capability on eBay, and I put Predicta in there, Predicta kits. These two popped up. A company in Hong Kong in the late 60s took the original kit and did a replicate, sort of. These things, the basic dimensions match perfectly. One's a, let's see, that's just a toy. This is a friction toy. That's the original box. Hanley didn't know about these things. He became irate on the phone when I sent him pictures of these. He had no idea that the company had been ripped off. This came from Amsterdam, this came from Australia. Just simply paid and shipped here. But it's fascinating to see these because you clearly know what it is. There's your friction capability underneath. But
He's fell on the lawn.
He's flying on the floor by your right
A
foot.
black one.
no.
There you
You'll notice that there's a driver and the driver has a traditional steering wheel.
Oh.
True story. So come up, look at it. You're welcome.
Microphone.
Speak up.
Microphone.
Sorry. You're welcome to come up and look at these, my friends, and look over the engineering drawings, and look over the photographs of this booklet we'll be doing. It's a real hot, basic craftsmanship kind of book, but it'll get you past most of the problems of assembling this kit from the original parts. So you're welcome to have a look. Take a look at the anomalies in the rear fins of this. See how terrible it is, and see how pretty the plastic is when you just wax it. It's a beautiful color. It's just it didn't work. And so the first 1,000 are highly valuable these days. It used to be very much at all, but now it's $500 or $600 for an unbuilt pearl red one on eBay. And I'm assuming I've got all mine. I have 4 or 5 that I don't need anymore. But so I'm not. Here's the original box. You see. And it sat, well, sort of. It sat like that from the factory, as they would send the basic, the bases out of the model itself. So that's it. It's kind of short today, but I wanted to bring you up to date. Please fill that list out wherever the darn thing is right now and get it back to me with your email addresses, and I'll get you on the list. Also tell you the website's updated, which will be in about 2 months. That's it, guys. Thank you for coming.